Good morning, everybody. I am Dr. Victoria Grinman, and today I'm here with Igor Shteynberg. Igor, welcome.
Hi, happy to be
Hello.
here.
I'm so excited for you to be here and for us to be having this conversation today. I want to hear all about who you are, what you do in the world, and just how you help people. Can you share with us a little bit about you?
Um, so the modality that I practice is called the Feldenkrais Method, or a longer name is the Feldenkrais Method of Somatic Education, which, if you don't know what it is, it probably doesn't tell you much about what it is, how it works, and more importantly, what's so wonderful about it. And the idea behind it that it relies on the inherent intelligence of the human brain and the nervous system, or neuroplasticity, ability of the brain to rewire itself. And it's actually a very simple way that it can help many people by, rather than teaching them how they should be in order to feel better physically or emotionally, to help them discover these possibilities by exploring. And I'm happy to get into more
More
detail
details?
on that. Um,
Hold on, Igor. Before we even get into the details about Feldenkrais, I would love for you to share just who you are.
oh,
Like what,
yes.
yeah, because, a lot of the people that are in the community and that are watching are, people who are, they have children, they have teenagers, they kind of, they dabble in all sorts of different alternative approaches to treating their mental health and their physical health. And one of the things that I love most is not only learning about the method, which I'm sure we will, but also just understanding a little bit about who you are and how you even are interested in this. Like, why is this something that you chose to practice? And then maybe we can get into a little bit of the details around the method itself.
All right, good question. Mine might not be so easy to answer because I don't very much separate who I am from what I do. Because, as you probably noticed, I love this work so much. And how did I choose it? Also, not so easy to describe. It just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, if we rewind back about 10 years, maybe 12, I was working in IT full time, and at the same time, I always been practicing some form of martial art, not super high level. I never got to black belt in Aikido, but very seriously, from my point of view, it was a big part of my life. And um, as I was doing that, there were some injuries that I was dealing with, and as I was coming for sessions with a massage therapist, she recommended that I look into the Feldenkrais method because I asked her probably about 20 or 30 questions about what she was doing and why. I was just naturally curious about it. Again, had nothing to do with my profession.
Mm-hmm.
And she recommended that I read a book by Moshe Feldenkrais. And I started reading and kept reading and find all his books that I could get. And then literally stumbled upon the Feldenkrais Institute of New York and was invited in to observe the training. And the way it looked, I guess responded to something that I saw when observing it
Mm.
without really understanding what it was. But I did feel it was a demonstration of a private session. And after the person got up from the table and not very much was done with them, physically the movement was small and gentle, and I could see the profound shift in how this person feels. They were standing differently, looking differently, feeling differently. The whole transformation just occurred, and that really grabbed me. And So there was not much of a calculation, a choice. Should I make this a career? Will I be able to make money doing that? It was like all of that was happened much later. Then I just waited a week or two and signed up for that training. And
Wow.
I don't remember making it was non-decision as far as decisions go. And again, something must have felt profound, and it drew me, and that's and by responding to that, I got here, and the here to kind of, again, now we're jumping back 10 to 12 years. I work with children with special needs and with adults, and a lot of my training and learning and wonderful discoveries were made working with children and learning to work with children at a wonderful nonprofit, the Field Center for Children's Integrated Development. And I have my own private practice working with adults and kids with special needs, and also typically developing kids. Everybody could use some support in being more in touch with themselves. So it's not limited to special needs, but often special needs children need it the most because their development is affected and they can't really fill in the gaps on their own.
Got it. Got it. I love this so much. So it sounds to me like it was something that, you know, you observed being done, you observed the effects, and obviously for you, you were going through something and it supported you. So it was like a very natural entrance into doing this also for people. And so that's a beautiful story and gift that you have. So I'm curious now, you know, there's so many methods and methodologies out there and so many strategies for bringing embodiment to the person's experience, especially when they're disembodied. There's a lot of different methods in working with people who've experienced various traumas out there. And so what makes the Feldenkrais method distinct? What separates it from others, and what, you know, makes it special, would you say?
I think the special thing about it is that it really relies on the person learning from within their own body, mind, nervous system. And it plays a huge bet on the intelligence of that nervous system.
Mm.
And often methodologies come from a point of view that the nervous system is lacking something, so we'll bring that in. We'll introduce a new thing that the nervous system will not get itself or will not get it in time. And we will make that stick somehow. And that is sort of completely opposite view, which is unfortunately very popular. And I want to explain a little bit more in detail because this explanation might not make sense, and many forms of work may be gentle, but if they come from an idea that something is missing in you, we're going to adjust things to make you better, it's fixing.
Yeah.
And fixing is justified when you know how the whole thing works, what is its next step, and how to make it happen and how to make it stick.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think you know that, then put yourself in better posture right now, sit a little straighter, and try to maintain it for the next 1 minute. And if you're watching this, I invite you to experiment really from your own experience. How long can you hold it? Will it stick? And how does it feel? It feels foreign, takes a lot of attention and focus, and it doesn't stick. And this is a minor adjustment compared to what happens with children with special needs. They need a lot of clarifying, filling in the gaps in their development, but they can't be jumped to the next step in development because they are not ready. So if a child doesn't crawl, making them crawl will not teach them how to crawl.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Helping them be clear about their movement, where they are, tune in more up, feel, sense, get feedback about their movement, get feedback about what they're good at already, what they have, will help them make discoveries. So that distinction is so unique. I don't think it can be stressed enough. It's whether I trust that, given the opportunity, the right feedback, the right touch, feedback through touch, the right constraints, the right environment, you can discover the next best thing for you. You or any other human, wherever they are in their development, which we develop at different rates, we have different points in our life, we have different skill sets and abilities. But if I trust that you can discover it, then I can have all the patience in the world to hold space for you to make that discovery. And if I am concerned that without me adjusting something in how you are, you will never get there, then I will be fixing you, however gently or not gently. And this distinction is huge. And I had kind of many levels of breakthrough, realizing like how deep that distinction goes. So this, I think, is the most crucial part.
I love what you're talking about. One of the things that just struck me was the importance of the collaboration. It's like a co-collaboration between you and the person that you're working with, because it's not just about strategy, but it's also about your mindset around where someone is at and their own ability to feel within themselves and really be able to connect with themselves. Because as you said, if you as the practitioner don't have that mindset or belief that a person can connect with themselves, that impacts the approach, that impacts the whole process. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. And I like how you said to ability of the person to connect with themselves, because really it's a feedback that they need about themselves. They don't need feedback about what I want from them or what I think their next step is, because it's not useful feedback. You can't talk to the person about what they don't have really successfully. I mean, to adult you can, and we are kind of conditioned to switch on this track to feel like, oh, I'm liking this, let me add this to me. And you can try to convince an adult to do that. Child, I think for the better mostly, is not convincible of that. They will likely reject the thing that doesn't match them. Literally, like they'll push you away, they jump off the table and go, because they will not tolerate imposition. Not any, not as much as adult, for sure. And sorry, I kind of lost the thought. Anyway, let me put that on hold.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying. And you're right in the sense that naturally children would not, tolerate an imposition. They would say that's, they're very, they're much quicker, younger children especially, right, to just kind of say, no, that's not for me. It's only as we get older that we start to become a little bit more, I guess, impressionable. And, we kind of say, we go along with what other people want. The thing that I want to also bring up, though, is in trauma work. This sounds to me like something that would very, very much align with a methodology that is very trauma sensitive and trauma informed, because as we know, people who are experiencing different things, something shocking, for example, they are disconnected and disembodied, and in that moment of treating them and really supporting their healing, telling them what to do or trying to fix something is not as effective, and also, I would say, not even as ethical, right, as really being with them, being with where they're at, and having them learn about their own natural just physiology, being, their own connection to themselves. So this is incredible. So what is it? And again, also for children with special needs, because children with special needs have a different timeline, a different pace. They have, something else that they're, working off of that may not look quote unquote typical for someone who is, not experiencing what they're experiencing within their bodies. So this sounds very sensitive to me. So what does it look like in session? Like, how is it, does the person lie down? Is there talking? Like, what is it? What does the method look like?
All right, so I think there are like three things: working trauma sensitive, working with children, and what does a session look like. I just want to bookmark this so we
Sure.
don't, because it's a very juicy question. So let me start, I guess, by saying, how do we help the person move forward in their own learning and development and make the discovery without forcing it? Because you could argue, like, you move all day, you do physical things, so you might as well discover these things on your own. Like, what's my usefulness as a Feldenkrais practitioner? And the idea is that I'm looking for a way to accelerate your learning without imposing its direction. And that looks and feels a certain way that I'll try to describe. So the idea behind the session is that the person should feel comfortable and they should feel like themselves, but in the best way possible. So the idea is we support the person, whether it's a child or adult, in being comfortable on the table, and that includes emotional comfort. So if child doesn't want to lie down, we'll negotiate without imposing. Maybe parents will convince a child to lie down, promising some reward. Maybe they read a book or sing a song together, and so on. And the position needs to be comfortable for the person, and the touch is intended to provide feedback about what's already happening, but not any random kind of feedback, but the feedback about what works well, what is the organizing forces, and what are main movement properties that are healthy, that are functioning well. And by tuning in more into those, child is much, much more likely to make a discovery about their movement. And it's true for adults too. But a typical adult without kind of much trouble, like daily aches and pains, but generally like neurotypical, developed, fully has all the function, they take quicker to fill in the gaps than a child, and it not always as critical for them because they could think and they could tweak things for themselves. But the child who is missing a developmental milestone, for example, and cannot continue, they are unlikely to discover it on their own, given it some time is maybe okay, but not too much time, because development continues, the child grows, the proportion change, and it's much harder for them to explore. So they need feedback, because definitely they are not getting the right feedback from themselves. They are not able to sense those strengths that they have and build on top of them. And they
Can
end
I
up.
stop you for a moment and
Yes.
just share a little bit about, you keep saying this, and I definitely understand what it is, but a lot of people may not. When you say that they're not getting feedback or they're not getting the right feedback, can you share a little bit about what that is? Like, what would be an example of feedback that somebody might be getting that is positive, and what would be something that would be more detrimental or just not accurate?
So let's say a child is not learning to walk in time, which is like 12 to 18 months. And they might be just sitting and maybe not even crawling. And it's time for, if they want to be on a developmental track and continue, they already ideally would be walking. But of course, every child is different and the timeline could shift. But once there is obvious that they're not doing as much as their peers, then that means somehow from their own movement, from doing things, they don't get enough feedback that allows them to discover the ability to walk. And if you take a typical child, then I think between like the earliest walkers, usually at 9 and 18 months, somehow without any help from parents, they discover that ability to walk.
Mm-hmm.
You can just let them be, and that is actually it's worth mentioning, because often adults, especially parents, think that they can help with development, and with typical children, your best help is get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Make the environment nice, make sure that the child can explore, but don't stand them and try to teach them how to stand. And if you attempt to, just ask yourself, how much do you know about your own standing? Do you remember how you learned it? Do you think you can really teach another person to stand? And if you want to try, find a person who recently had a stroke and relearning how to walk, and talk to them and ask them, how difficult is it to rediscover walk and relearn it? They have to relearn it.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the learning happens on their own. We sometimes humor ourselves into thinking that we can help a child by propping them up, by making them do movements. But really, it's always in a child, and they'll find it in their own time. Typically, developing child with a good feedback that they get, they will learn. And this is the ability of the brain that we have. It's inherent,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't need nudging or extra reinforcement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The brain rewires itself based on the experience, and that change will happen. You don't need to have the experience and then say, "Yay, you brain, let's rewire here." You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to explain to the person, because they will already be discovering, and they are already different once they explored. And
Mm-hmm.
with children, you can't really explain in words. They're not verbal at the early developmental stages. So then the only way you can explain is by moving them, by making them do things.
Mm-hmm.
And at best, it could be not useful, but because you're doing something to the child, you can easily force things that
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like to you like an imposition, but they might be detrimental to the development, because they will rob the child of opportunity to explore
Mm-hmm.
and discover things. And it's not going to be a huge gap, perhaps, but still, why create those gaps when they don't have to be created?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love a lot of what you just said, and it reminds me of the understanding around joining and creating an environment that is hospitable for growth and development versus forcing or pushing any sort of development or any sort of milestone upon a child, which I think is a whole other conversation about parenthood and, parenting strategies. But I think that it is something that is pervasive, that sometimes we want so much to be in line, or we want our children to be, where we think they should be. So, there's a lot of force as it relates to parenthood. So I think what you just shared in regards to, letting it be and allowing them to explore, and then the Feldenkrais method, it sounds like, is very much grounded in this understanding that things happen more naturally, and it's less, it sounds to me, forcing an outcome and more creating an environment and an opportunity for, like you said, holding space for the child or for the person to sort of discover something newly or arrive at some sort of feedback that they're getting about their own development or functioning, so that then they can make a decision, right, which way they want to go next. So that
Yes.
that is so, informed by a trauma lens, and really is very understanding of development in general. So I like it very, very much. So tell me.
That's a great summary. Can I just chime in a little bit?
Sure.
So, because what you said, hold in space, and I just want to describe further what happens in a session in that comfortable position. The
Mm-hmm.
environment made is constrained. The person is lying, they're out of gravity to the degree that we can negotiate with the child, and adults usually willing to lie down without much convincing. And the the way they are supported neutralizes the forces and allows them to naturally let go from habitual tension.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it just dissipates because they're supported in a position that matches them. And then the movements I do with them are really not moving them, because that would feel like doing to the person, but highlighting something, giving them a hint, and then listening for the response from within the person.
Mm-hmm.
And if that response is, let's say, high quality response, it's the person, without thinking about it, without maybe even realizing what I'm doing, responds in a beautiful way, and the subtle movement happens that helps them learn about themselves. Then if I feel that response, person feels that too, and I help them tune in more into this movement properties by subtly hinting on those movement possibilities, that
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to be executed fully, they don't have to be talked about at all.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to analyze and remember what you've learned or hold on to it after the fact. So
Mm-hmm.
the environment, really, the exploration is constrained to a smaller range of movements, smaller set of movement properties, and that is what allows acceleration take place. The development learning is sped up
Mm-hmm.
because it's easier for nervous system to make conclusions, so to speak, which
Mm-hmm.
of course is a metaphor. The nervous system doesn't operate in the same way that our thinking does,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a best comparison I can come up with. And what you said about trauma, and trauma informed would be a right terminology for Feldenkrais. And also, the level of work is usually, as I see it, is below trauma, like tuning into healthy functioning.
Mm-hmm.
That helps you take advantage of it more in
Mm-hmm.
a way that makes trauma be less over focus. Because often with a physical injury, wherever the pain is, takes the whole screen, so to speak. Like, this is, it's in your face, your pain, your difficulty, your trouble is here, 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 look at it. And really, yes, you have trouble, but you have all the rest of you that's not troubled. And
Mm-hmm.
that trouble, the difficulty, takes some toll. It blocks some of your healthy functioning somewhere, but it needs to take its rightful place so that the rest of you can express itself and not be limited to that degree. So once the trauma kind of takes it less of a hold on the person, then they can find a way out of it and not be controlled by it, whether it's a physical difficulty that
Mm-hmm.
may take time to heal, but it doesn't need to throw them back that far, or it's emotional trauma.
Yeah. Wow. I love the visual, right? Where whether it's physical trauma and someone's in just physical pain, or it's emotional trauma that, stops our, because sometimes even with emotional trauma, like, or our bodies, just react as if they want, maybe they don't know how to, maybe the body stopped knowing how to, put my hands out, right? Or maybe inside of the trauma that the person was experiencing, they were, maybe tied up and not able to move, right? And so the body is stuck there, a lot of the times. And so a lot of the method that you're talking about, it sounds so holistic, right? So it really is taking into account not just, what's happening and, when it comes to the trauma, but you're saying the entire functioning and being able to give trauma, sort of, it's a part of the person rather than the whole person. And so then it provides access to all of the other pieces that do know how to function and that do know, and just haven't been able to be expressed. So to me, this sounds incredibly aligned with a lot of, the methodologies that, I would say are very trauma sensitive and supportive of the whole functioning of the person. So I'm curious, when you're working with children, are parents in the room? Do you have, a relationship building exercise that you do with the children before you take them on as a client? How does that work? Like, how important is it that you and the child are acquainted and know one another and there's a trust there?
Well, it's crucial that there is a trust there, and every session, every minute of it includes that focus on connecting and trusting. Because if I'm wanting to connect to the person and help them hear themselves better, they need to really trust that I mean well and I'm not going to impose. And that trust, it's not enough to say it, and it depends on the child. Some are happy and welcome touch
Mm-hmm.
because they crave it,
Mm-hmm.
and they would take any touch, whether it's forceful touch in like many PT sessions or gentle touch in Feldenkrais or hugs from their parents. They'll take it all. So
Yeah.
that, and in a way, it's lucky for me that they're not uh, defensive of touch. And if they had a lot of forceful therapies that focus on their difficulty, and that's actually important distinction, the therapies that focus on the difficulty often strengthen that difficulty,
Mm-hmm.
and also the child feels fought with, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a sad situation because the practitioners who fight that child think they're doing a good thing, so that gives them emotional and physical
Mm-hmm.
strength to fight that child. In my view, it's a waste, and really unfortunate waste of time with a child. So but back to establishing trust, so the child needs to understand to the degree that they can, depending on the age and cognitive abilities. w- we need to I need to get their permission, and from a baby, from an infant, the permission would be that they are not crying when I hold them, and
Yeah.
their parents would, and that I would let their parents hold them anytime they wish.
Mm-hmm.
Whether the parent wants to hold the child or the child gets uneasy and misses the parent, I don't try to force an extra minute with them at the risk of disappointing them, because when you are disappointed or when you are defensive, learning, discovering is kind of a bottom of your priorities if it makes the list at all.
Mm-hmm.
Think about, like, if you drive in a car on the highway and somebody cuts you off, are you thinking about, oh, should I learn how to go around the obstacle better? Let me see. So that's the idea. So we switch to fight or flight, and hopefully we switch back, but we're definitely not learning as effectively, if at all.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel forced, you feel an imposition, your natural focus is defending against it,
Yeah.
or trying to suppress that defense if you've been conditioned that, like, letting the person force something upon you is a good thing. But both of these are not learning. They are uh, kind of you trying to make something happen, or you're
Yeah.
trying to defend against something. So
Yeah.
once, and the trust needs to be continuously reestablished. And with some children, the first session might be just 5 minutes of hands-on time because that's what it took,
Mm-hmm.
and that is worthwhile, because once the relationship is built, they be able to let go of some defenses, and I could work with them more effectively. And the
Mm-hmm.
parent can be a part of that process, and it depends on each child. Sometimes it's better if the parent steps away and the child is not distracted, and
Mm-hmm.
other times the parent could entertain the child and attend to their needs, so I can focus on working through touch. Because again, what I say to the child or my explanation to the parent in the moment of a session, they are not so critical,
Mm-hmm.
because I need to give them feedback, literal feedback through touch.
Mm-hmm.
And
Go ahead.
that's the main, that is an important part of the experience. We can talk about it later, and it helps if a child feels at ease, because if not, again, they switch to a state that's less conducive to learning.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And, when you're right in the sense that when we force something, perhaps a child might respond with what we want, but the response is from a place of defense and fear or fight, flight, freeze, right, or fawning. But it's not from a place of this natural occurrence of response. It really is just a reaction. And it's not sustainable. Right. So what you're looking for is a response that's more natural. And so it's really going with the ebb and the flow of the nervous system and what it naturally wants to do, and then making a decision based on that. Not a decisive decision consciously all the time, but really having that feedback, and then making a decision. I love this conversation, and for the sake of time, we're going to wrap up for today. But I wanted for people to know that we will plan another talk, and we'll invite a select group. It'll go live, and we'll invite a select group of people who would like to be part of that live, to ask questions and maybe even try some of these strategies at home, so that people can more embody and understand what that looks like to really, work with your nervous system, right? So that's something that I think would be really helpful for viewers. But before we end for today, Igor, is there anything else that you want to leave people with, or share with them where you work and how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. You could read more about my work and contact me on my website, which is movingisbeing.com. And I guess it can be posted next to the live later.
Mm-hmm.
And what you mentioned, I guess we kind of we didn't get to that sort of loss. I wasn't aware of time, but there is a way to give yourself the same kind of unconditional, accepting, supportive attention that is also part of Feldenkrais, which we could do over Zoom. And that is a whole other beautiful thing, that without anybody touching you, you can be guided through movement, which will help you tune in into your own nervous system
Mm.
in a way that will create the opportunity for a similar discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, in some ways, so amazing, like to think that you can help yourself without imposing, and you don't even need necessarily another person, because once you do it in a guided format, you can do it on your own without anyone, because you
Mm-hmm.
always have yourself
Mm-hmm.
available. Your nervous system is always there, always online, always listening to the degree that I can. So
Yeah.
just to hopefully that thought is inspiring and comforting, and I guess we can leave our listeners with that.
For sure. Yes, Igor, thank you so much. I think that a lot of the people that are viewing today and that I work with specifically, we talk often about an experience that there's a lot of external noise and external feedback. And what we've become used to, and a lot of the children, younger children now that I've been working with, I noticed become used to, is always this external feedback and then reacting externally. And then that not only, we're not always learning as a natural sort of circumstance in life to listen to our own bodies. It's only when something happens or there's some atypical functioning that then we all of a sudden get used to, the idea of, okay, what else can we do alternatively? But what you're talking about is really getting people back to their natural, inner sense, or interoception, and really being able to heal themselves. So I love what you said at the end there, where once someone is able to tap into that, they can actually do that on their own, and they can create those mindful moments throughout the day to excel their own body's ability to naturally come back to itself. So I love that so much, and I can't wait for us to do this again. So we'll definitely do it again. For everyone viewing, if you are interested in getting in touch with Igor, he's obviously not only knowledgeable, but very passionate. And I loved your story from the beginning of how you went from IT work to really helping heal people. That to me is a true calling. So you can reach out to him, movingisbeing.com. And I did put that in the comment section there. And if you have any questions for me, I will try to answer them. You can always reach out to me, www.growingkindminds.com, or through Facebook. And we will certainly be back to answer more pointed questions with a select group. And if you'd like to be part of that group, please email me directly with the subject line Feldenkrais Method focus group. And we will get back to you. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.